Afghanistan is a country stricken by drug trade, with 14% of their population involved in it. It plays a massive role. 90% of opium in the world produced comes from Afghanistan. This makes the country on the global stage very important for all of drug trade. Afghanistan struggles with drug trade going in and out of the country, but also inside the country, drugs are playing a massive role. It has control over the job market and affects their economy, which is producing millions upon millions of dollars. With this complete control and dominance, it influences the Taliban to gain massive control over provinces of Afghanistan. This will eventually lead to the increase of control to bigger regions of Afghanistan if they aren't stopped. Drug trade is a massive supply of the money that the Taliban are getting, which is supplying them to have control. As a whole, officers and laws in Afghanistan are trying to make an attempt to stop the trade in the production, but with such a massive market and involvement by so many people, it's nearly impossible to stop this massive force of cash crop production. The situation that Afghanistan is dealing with has two options to solve it. The first is to enforce all their laws, trying to go after and be proactive against the opium production, trying to take everyone down and imprison them, with the main goal of completely destroying all of the opium and having a control over the drug market. The other option is to legalize the drug trade, which will allow people to be able to produce and sell at their own will. This will also give people full control over the market and causing the crime rate to drop, as everything will be legal. Both of the options come with impactful repercussions. If they were to enforce military and officer actions, it would increase the corruption in their system because of people trying to rebel. Also, this would increase crime rate. The main thing that would happen if they were to attempt to ban the drug completely, it would increase the value, as supply would go down with an increase in demand, making the value of opium increase. And with an increase of opium, it would attract more people to get involved in the market because they could make more money. Therefore, a ban on the drug would increase the popularity, as people could make more money off of it. For the second option, Afghanistan legalizing the production of opium and legalizing drug trade would be very beneficial, as employment would drastically increase, crime would decrease as there wouldn't be any rebellion against officers and police in the area. The disadvantage of this choice, though, it would be very controversial for Afghanistan to find a policy and agreement between them and other countries, as many other countries have their own bans on drug trade. Our group's standpoint is the second choice, legalizing the production and drug trade. The disadvantage of this choice would be the controversy of finding an agreement and policy for Afghanistan with other countries to have. We chose the second standpoint. Although it may seem rash at first to legalize drug production and drug trade in our country, but compared to the other option of trying to enforce harsh rules and taking physical action, all that would do was increase crime and increase the corruption in the country. This cause and effect would increase more people to want to get involved, then the people would rebel, and it would cause a lot of chaos in the country, which would backfire on trying to solve the problem by making it worse. But with the second option of legalizing the drug, this would actually help the country to be rebuilt, as it would give employment, the economy would begin to be stable, as money would be coming in and used for different things, and it would also help people to get out of poverty and the country to develop, as a massive market would be opened. Asia is constantly overlooked in respects to drug trade, with many other countries being deeply involved in the trade. Yet, Asia actually plays a massive role in the drug trade globally. Myanmar, for example, is a country in Asia that has a massive opium production. Their economy and society is constantly being damaged by the drug trade, with it being very easy to get involved. There's a constant increase in drug trafficking in China also. This causes the government and police force to counter the drug trade by having harsh restrictions and enforcements on their people. The Chinese have gotten the drug trade and drug production down to such a system that they actually have massive warehouses with state-of-the-art equipment and supplies to produce drugs and chemicals at the rate of tons in less than a day. The Chinese policies in place against drugs are extreme compared to other countries. Depending on the type of drugs that you may have on you while being captured, could result in a death penalty. This mass production of drugs is exactly why the Chinese are enforcing strict laws. Their officers and government are attempting to control the market and drug production as best as they can. Our group is siding with China and agreeing with the means of their actions. With such a massive market, every stop against them will count and benefit the country. There are many large-scale drug and chemical producers that are legal, which China needs to fix. There needs to be a consistency in their actions to gain as much control over the market as possible. Earlier, I mentioned the Chinese establishing a way to mass produce drugs and chemicals through warehouses. They have the ability to easily produce and sell them online. As you can see here, this is a Google search on research chemicals. The first result that comes up is a website dedicated to selling drugs and chemicals. They have the ability to produce drugs and sell them online with ease. On Google, you can see here I searched research chemicals, and the first result that came up was a website dedicated to selling drugs and chemicals. These drugs are either for consumption or chemicals made as parts of drugs for people to make their own. On this website, they claim that the drugs and chemicals are used for research only. They claim the products are not to be consumed by humans, but in reality, this is just a bypass to restrictions and laws. These are all just different parts of drugs and being sold for drug use. This is a new era way for drug trade and technology in the drug business. Previously, and still today, there are black markets and online dark web markets to buy drugs. But now, it is as easy as searching research chemicals on any computer to directly get any kind of drug you want.
Drug trafficking also affects Europe, with a trade that's worth over $450 billion a year, with approximately $100 billion contributed solely by cocaine and cocaine-based drugs. While cocaine is one of the most profitable drugs on the market currently, marijuana is making a crack in the competition, with between 0.5 and 5% of all Europeans having consumed marijuana at least once in the last 5 years. Some of the biggest offenders to the drug trade are the Irish mob. They can account for 35% of the total drug trade in Europe and 65% of the drug trade in the UK. Regarding the marijuana crisis in Europe, Morocco is the biggest contributor to the world's marijuana market, with Morocco contributing over 2/3 of the marijuana to the world. It's so profitable that marijuana is responsible for 10% of Morocco's GDP. Russia is one of the most drug traffic heavy countries in the world. And while there is no central cartel in charge of all these operations, instead it's small gangs or individual dealers leading the way in drug trafficking. Why is this? That's a good question, Boris. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the Soviet ruble plummeted and inflation rose towards the roof. So a hard tradable product was used as a pseudo-cash system, making drugs a very popular choice and drug trading an even more popular career path. Opiates, like opium and morphine, and other drugs that affect the opioid reactors, are so popular in Russia because Russia is bordering drug-rich countries in the Middle East. With most coming from Afghanistan, the drugs are smuggled through the former Soviet Republic, now known as Tajikistan. Drug trade is so important to Tajikistan that 35% of its GDP is thanks to drug smuggling. Once the drugs make it to Russia, they either stay or they move on to Europe. The people that are smuggling drugs are criminals and need to be charged accordingly. However, in places like Russia, the government is full of corrupt officials, so many of these drug smugglers get off scot-free, and many use animals, children, and even drones to transport these drugs. So many of the culprits would be quite difficult to track in these scenarios. However, certain drugs like marijuana are treated with the same severity as crack cocaine, and such 1960s thinking has cost teenagers and young adults years in terms of prison time. So decriminalizing certain practices like marijuana, and instead treat it like how we treat alcohol, could lead to less drug crime and violence overall. Drug trafficking is a difficult subject to understand properly, so there is no easy answer or obvious solution. We need to come together as a world and recognize the importance of drug addiction and the practices fueling it, if we as a species ever want to overcome drug trafficking and drug use in general.
Since 1997, the Coast Guard has done an excellent job of containing drug trafficking in Central America as they seized thousands and thousands of pounds of cocaine and marijuana en route to North America through the Caribbean. This containment of drug trafficking has caused a change in route for the drug trade. The new route from South America to North America is Central America. Central America now acts as a bridge from South America to North America that leads illicit drugs to the big consumers in the United States. Today, 84% of illicit cocaine that reaches the United States goes through Central America. Central America has a very common environment to the environment just like South America. Central America reeks with corruption, violence, and crime. Criminal organizations and major drug cartels are formed in this region due to drug trafficking. Drug cartels make an average of $5 to $12 million a month with their business and almost $700 million a year. Cartels who make this kind of money use their proceedings towards businesses that help create many jobs that are essential to the region. Drug cartels also have control over government officials and law enforcement. Corruption in the region allows cartels to have control over many areas of the region, which leads to violent actions. Central America's homicide rate is 100 deaths per 100,000 inhabitants. This is caused by gang violence between cartels over control of areas in Central America. Using the region's money for law enforcement, crime in Central America costs the region 8% of the region's GDP, and it looks like it's not getting any better. Mexico and other areas of the region are hesitant to stand up and fight against the cartels due to the power that the cartels contain over the region. It makes it very difficult to come up with a solution to the problem of global drug trafficking.